So we are running a little bit behind. So I'm going to keep it somewhat quick because we need to be on time for our session at the top of the hour. So I'm going to keep it short, but I also love to post these survey results on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, follow the Data Career Summit, and you can get more in depth with this information there. So when Dustin and I were brainstorming the theme of this event, I kind of wondered if it would be interesting to take a look at people's personalities. Did a certain personality tend to gravitate towards either specific roles or just the data field in general? So we surveyed a variety of people, asking them to take a personality quiz, and I'm here to share the results. All right, so across more than 200 respondents, some personality types tended to be more common than others. So the most common being the analyst personality type, which is really no surprise. And that falls into that conscientious category of the DISC assessment. But the most common category overall was actually the steady category. That's full of supporters, planners, and stabilizers. Okay, it should be noted that most of our respondents fall into that data analyst role, so these results are kind of skewed in that direction. But when we look at certain roles and which personality types maybe are most associated with them, we can see that those in the steady category actually tend to dominate the data entry role. So a lot of personalities in that steady category actually kind of fall in that data entry role. But you can see too that almost a third, or at least a third, of business analysts, data analysts, analytics engineers, and machine learning engineers all kind of have that personality type. Leaders, on the other hand, have fewer people in that category, right? A much smaller percentage there. When we look at maybe leaders specifically, we can see that 37% of all leaders are actually associated with that dominant category. So it's kind of interesting to see that big yellow chunk in that bottom bar chart there. So those are all of the roles or all the personalities associated with the dominant category, and you can see that it's a large chunk of leaders. Next up, we're gonna actually switch back over to looking at our personality types, and we can see that initiators tend to kind of, or leaders actually tend to make up most of the people in that initiator personality category. Leaders also are captains and architects and drivers. You can see that kind of being reflected, that D category, or that dominant category, kind of taking up a big chunk of that relationship there. But for again, I think there's a lot of people here who are interested in the data analyst role. Obviously, we had a lot of data analysts respond to our survey. So data analysts, when we kind of take a look at the number of data analysts across the different personality types, we can see that we kind of had an overwhelming response from people in those roles, and that the primary or a lot of data analysts tend to be in that questioner personality type, or most questioners are actually data analysts. So kind of interesting to see that breakdown. Again, I'm going to dive a lot more into detail on subsequent posts out on LinkedIn in the coming weeks, because there's a lot of nuances, a lot of information in each one of these charts. So more to explore for sure. I did want to kind of pivot. One of the questions we did ask people was about how much time do you spend in certain activities. So we've kind of explored a little bit of the personality types and maybe what roles are fitting, or maybe what what roles are fitting, or maybe where personalities tend to kind of shine through in certain roles. But I actually want to pivot and talk about different activities that people in the data space engage in. So for starters, we asked about requirements gathering. So you can see, when gathering requirements for a project, there wasn't anything that maybe stood out significantly, right? It tends to be a larger portion of what people in a leadership position, a larger component of that role, but nothing, vastly, like wildly kind of different across the board. When we looked at data preparation, or ETL, some of that data engineering stuff Justin was just talking about, you can see that ETL, data prep, tends to be a larger chunk of that business analyst, data analyst, and analytics engineering roles. We then go into exploratory data analysis. So this is kind of exploring your data, maybe looking for insights. Again, we see large chunks of that activity in those same three roles. And when looking at data visualization, we see that heavily being a large component of what business analysts and data analysts do. Okay. So we can kind of see where those activities maybe are more associated with some roles than others. We do have a few more activities to take a look at. The next one is presentations. When you think about giving presentations as part of your role, what types of roles really do that? We see that it's a decent portion out of a lot of these roles, and a slightly larger portion in leadership. We then have automation. So for data entry, business analysts, leadership, they don't really seem to be engaged in automating things, but data analysts, analytics engineers, and machine learning engineers do spend time automating things, automating data, pipelines, for example, or reports, or what have you. So not too surprising there. My final slide, we're talking about discussions. So the first thing here is architecture discussions. Who is engaged in those? We're going to see a lot of, or mostly, machine learning engineers or leadership being engaged in architecture discussions. And then finally, strategic discussions. Everybody, or most roles, are engaged in that, but primarily, again, those machine learning engineers and leadership being engaged in those strategic discussions. So again, this was kind of a quick overview of some of that data that we gleaned. I want to thank everybody who took our survey. It really helps. We're not able to deliver these types of insights without the data. So we will be doing another survey again for our next event. But I will be sharing the details of this on LinkedIn shortly.